need you to come in person, verify your identity, and review all recent account activity, the representative explained. This could take several days to resolve. Preston hung up, understanding that Marshall had just cut off his access to financial resources. Without credit cards or bank access, he couldn't pay for hotels, flights, or any of the expenses required for a quick escape to Portland. He was being systematically trapped. At 6 p.m., as Preston was preparing to leave the office, Marina called instead of texting. Preston, I need to cancel tonight. Marshall suggested we have a family dinner since Nate's feeling better, and I can't think of a good excuse to decline. Marina, we need to talk. There have been some developments. What kind of developments? Preston looked around his office, suddenly paranoid that every conversation was being monitored. Not over the phone. Tomorrow morning, first thing. Preston, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Just be careful. Don't do anything unusual. Don't change your normal routines. And Marina, when you're with Marshall tonight, watch his behavior carefully. See if he seems different in any way. Different how? Just watch him. And we'll talk tomorrow. Preston ended the call and sat alone in his office as the sun set over the city. For 8 months, he'd been the one with power in his relationship with Marina. A sophisticated mentor guiding a naive suburban wife toward a more fulfilling life. He'd been the one with plans and resources and connections. Now he was trapped in his own office, afraid to go home, cut off from his finances, and facing an enemy who seemed to anticipate his every move. For the first time since childhood, Preston Quinn felt completely powerless. And somewhere across the city, Marshall Ashley was sitting in his home office, monitoring Preston's every move and preparing for the final phase of an operation that would leave both Preston and Marina with nowhere to run and no choice but to face the consequences of their betrayal. The hunter had become the hunted, and Marshall Ashley had always been very, very good at hunting. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Marina Ashley arrived home at 6:07 p.m. to find Marshall in the kitchen, preparing what appeared to be an elaborate family dinner. The dining room table was set with their good china, something they usually reserve for holidays and special occasions. Candles flickered in the center of the table, and the aroma of her favorite meal filled the house. What's all this? Marina asked. Something in Marshall's demeanor made her feel uneasy despite the romantic gesture. I thought we should have a proper family dinner. Marshall, not looking up from the stove. It's been too long since they're together without distractions. Nate appeared from the living room. His jaw still wired, but his spirits visibly improved. Dad made that chicken thing you like, Mom, the one with the herbs. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Marina kissed the top of Nate's head, noting how Marshall watched the interaction with unusual intensity. How are you feeling? Better, Dr. Chin says. I might be able to eat solid food next week. They settled around the dining room table, and for a moment, Marina could almost pretend they were still the happy family they'd once been. Marshall served dinner with the same careful attention he brought to everything else, ensuring Nate's portion was properly liquefied and checking that Marina had everything she needed. So, Marshall said as they began eating, I've been thinking about our vacation plans for this summer. Marina's fork paused halfway to her mouth. They hadn't discussed summer vacation plans, and the topic felt loaded given her secret plans to be living in Portland by then. I know we usually go to the beach house, Marshall continued. But I thought maybe this year we could try something different. Europe, maybe. I've always wanted to show you and Nate where I was stationed in Germany. That sounds expensive, Marina said carefully. I've been putting money aside for a while now. Thought it might be nice to take a real family trip before Nate heads off to college. Marshall's gray eyes met hers across the table. Unless you have other plans. The question felt like a trap, though Marina couldn't understand why. Marshall's behavior was perfectly normal, attentive, loving, focused on their family. But something underneath his words suggested deeper currents she couldn't read. No other plans, she said. The lie coming easily to
Butter chicken is one of the most popular dishes in the world for a reason. And once you make it at home, you'll realize exactly why that is. I'm going to start off by making some rice, because this can happen in the background while we do everything else. I'm using basmati rice, which I'm going to start by rinsing off. There are all different kinds of reasons people say to rinse off your rice, but I think the biggest thing for me is that it sits in a pretty loose bag and collects all kinds of dust and who knows what while it's on its way to you. So that's why I'm rinsing it off in this big glass pot. Hopefully it gives you a really clear visual of what's on your rice before you rinse it off. Once I'm happy with how that looks, bring in my rice maker, give it one last little shake, and then drain off my rice. Most people say to rinse it until the water runs clear, but I think this is more than enough. And into our rice maker we go. As most of you know, I don't normally like to measure when I cook, so cover this with some water And I'm going to use the pinky method, where I go in right up to that.
And then I had to do one last thing.
Oh man, I am most definitely going to be regretting this tomorrow morning.
As I ate my uncooked Hot Pockets, I continued to spiral downward.
Oh man, it's bringing back flashbacks. I'll pick that up later.
The crunchiness was hard at first,
Ow.
and it only continued to get worse. But since it wasn't 100 bags of chips,
If I have to eat another chip in this challenge, I swear I'm gonna.
I was able to finish them off and move on to the next item, which fortunately was soft.
I saved the best for last. You're probably thinking to yourselves, Eric, what are you talking about? Why would that be the best? It's because these nuggets are going to be eaten with some wow sauce.
At this point, I was outrageously full, but all that remained after these nuggets was one last item, which if I couldn't finish, then another person's diet would get added to the binder.
The only thing left is that travesty of a carrot cake, and I have no idea if my plan is going to work. Well, everyone, it's as frozen as it's going to get. Oh, dude, it's not even frozen at all.
Thinking it was going to be like a popsicle, all right? Each bite of this carrot cake was insufferable.
Oh, gotta say, everybody, people have things they really don't like, and they have things they really do like. This is not one of the things I really like. It's only one way it's going down.
I held out for as long as I could, but I knew this wasn't going to go down without a little bit of help. I got some good old peanut butter to mask the taste. And guess what? It still tasted awful. But it was helping just enough to make progress. And with only a few minutes left in the day, I just had one last thing to say.
Ricky, I hate you. I never ever want to relive that experience ever again.
All right, so here's the deal. I ordered the shirt just in case I was able to finish everything on the diet plan today. Just got the wrong size. It's a little snug.
After conquering Samantha's diet, I was over halfway done with the challenge. Fortunately for me, though, my stomach was destroyed.
All right, everybody, well, it's day 4. I'm officially halfway through this challenge. I'm ashamed to admit that I had nightmares last night about carrot cake. Imagine being a grown man and having nightmares about carrot cake. With how horrible day 3 went, I was pretty afraid to open the binder. And with all the calories, sugar, and fat I had just put into my body, I felt like I was starting to go crazy. All right, everybody, it's time for a mid-challenge consultation with the fridge. Fridge, being completely honest, what do you think of my current mental state at this moment? Speak louder into the microphone. Yikes. Even though my goal was to gain weight for this challenge, I was massively bloated. So I called in some backup.
I feel slimmer already.
I did a little bit of reading to revitalize my mind and shift my focus away from all the food I had just eaten. After that, I had a nice walk with my dog Apollo, and then it was time to check and see what my progress was on my side mission this week. But what I was about to discover was completely unexpected.
Everybody gets past the halfway point. Fuck. So now what I'm going to do is weigh myself, see how much I've gained.
As I was about to weigh in, something in the corner caught my eye. At first, I didn't think much of it when Ricky presented me with the binder. But him choosing to include this specific photo of us had a much deeper meaning than I originally thought. You may not know this about me, but I've had my fair share of weight struggles throughout my life. A few weeks after this photo was taken, I found myself at the doctor's office for what I thought would be a routine checkup, but what actually happened would dramatically change the rest of my teenage years. I stepped on the scale and saw 215 pounds staring back at me, and at first, it was just a number. But when my doctor told me that my weight put me in the obese category for kids my age, it hit me harder than any insult any bully had ever thrown at me. For my entire life up until that that point, I just wanted to be seen as someone other than the overweight kid. So with that 215-pound number etched in my mind, I walked out of that doctor's office that day with a mission to lose as much weight as possible. And roughly 11 months later, I had lost about 90 pounds. But even after the weight loss, that number never really left me. It became more than a number. Like subconsciously, I would think if I ever found myself backwards, that reflection, I was starting to wonder, what if after? But now in this very moment, as I saw myself creeping back, 2 minutes of reflection didn't last very long. Because not only was the next diet the biggest so far, failing it meant losing the entire challenge.
Alrighty guys, it is day 5. I'm actually feeling pretty rejuvenated today. So it's time to get back to the challenge. Let's see who's next.
I didn't know it yet, but what was going to appear on the page after this one was going to turn the next 24 hours of my life into total chaos.
What is in my stomach right now?
Today's a beast. Finish or pay, because if food's left by the end of the day, 2 more names are on their way.
2 more names potentially getting added to the binder if I couldn't finish the next meal plan. Ricky was clearly pushing me to my limits, especially because the next person up on the list was Kenneth Brumley. Kenneth was featured in the documentary Half Ton Dad. At his peak weight, Kenneth weighed in at an estimated 1,035 pounds. Ricky's challenge was quite the surprise, but he was about to hit me with another one that I wasn't really that prepared for.
So I had trouble finding Ken's exact diet. All I was able to find were the typical meals he ate while he was on Half Ton and the total amount of calories he ate per day, which unfortunately for you is going to be the highest out of anyone's diet so far. Good luck.
With a little over 12 hours on the clock and a semi-recovered stomach, I knew I had to finish this diet because if Ricky added 2 more names to the binder, I'd definitely be failing this challenge.
Thank goodness this meal has orange juice. I gotta get my fruit in somehow.
At this point, the taste of the food wasn't as big of a concern. So I combined my favorites together to make a mega breakfast sandwich. But as soon as I got to the legendary McDonald's hash brown, I knew exactly what had to happen next.
I dedicate this next part of the video to all the OGs on the channel because there's an item I used to make all the time in my videos. And all I gotta say is that if you try it, your taste buds will be blown away. Step 1, get your pancake and hash brown like so. Step 2, add a little bit of bacon, just like so, my friends and family. And then step 3, skip the McMuffin, we don't need the extra carbs. Step 4, garnish your hash brown and bacon just like so. And the final step in the process, everybody, is to garnish your creation just like so, my friends and family. And then you have yourselves what I like to call the electrifier. Woo! Who else thinks I should be designing McDonald's menu items? McDonald's, if you're watching this video, I'm always available. All right, always available. Maybe not right now, but in the future at some point.
I finished off the rest of the breakfast items before diving into the dessert, which was 2 massive cinnamon rolls and a little bit of syrup. Meal 1 was pretty easy, but since Ricky was the one sending me the meals, I had no idea what to expect for the rest of the day.
That was pretty spectacular.
Okay, so Ricky just texted me meal 2 and meal 3. Meal 3 is going to be at a fast food place, and it's a fast food place I really, really love. So I'm going to go grocery
At the store, I grabbed the next few items I needed, including something I really did not want to see.
After this week, it's safe to say I'm officially a Pepsi guy. This is going to be going into my, what usually is my protein shaker cup, which I find kind of hilarious and slightly ironic.
As usual, I started on the thing I was least excited to eat. And in this case, it was the Doritos. My mouth quickly paid the price.
You guys got to comment down below. Are you team nacho cheese or are you team Cool Ranch?
I powered through the rest of the chips using my shaker cup as I went. This Coke was the last thing I needed. And even though the roof of my mouth was back to being in shambles, the Doritos were done. Next, it was onto the Snickers bars, which I made quick work of. If this all wasn't enough sugar already, what I had next was going to be the icing on the cake.
That is a pure exemplification of American junk food. I don't even know if exemplification is even a word, but I just had to say it.
As I worked my way through these Pop-Tarts, the extreme amount of caffeine and sugar was starting to do crazy things to my body.
Woo!
As I shoved the second to last Pop-Tart back into my mouth and sipped the remaining Coke, what happened next, I still can't fully understand.
Woo! Oh my goodness. I don't know what about that meal was incredible, but your boy is officially locked in. I'm introducing a new segment to the videos, everyone. When I get officially dialed in, my pancreas has been seasoned, my organs, my stomach, that is one special on stage. Side note, I really have always wanted to get a Burger King crown, so I was really excited when I found out I was supposed to come here today.
The first bite of Burger King was delicious, but with this much in front of me,
I need to make some adjustments to my setup I got going on here because it's just not working.
I had a feeling things were going to go downhill fast.
Necessary to do it anyways.
boys. After applying an unnecessary amount of ranch to this burger, I finished it off and made my way to the nuggets next. My sauce of choice was the legendary sweet and sour. It was good, but flavor fatigue was starting to hit. And when that happens, it's never a good thing.
What you guys gotta do when you're in moments like this where flavor fatigue is hitting, you gotta go bam, and then boom, and then back to bam.
Sweet and sour and ranch, obviously a goated combo. After spending the next few minutes eating those, it was finally time for the fries.
Exercise. I thought you meant extra fries. If you all made it up into this point of the video, I just want you all to drop a French fry emoji down below.
At this point, I was starting to get very full, but there were 2 iconic items still left for me to finish.
2 orders of fries are down. I feel like I just ran a marathon. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a work of art. The legendary Hershey's pie from Burger King.
Woo! The Burger King meal was finished, and with that much food in me, the only thing I could think of doing next was...
Time to go grocery shopping. Again.
You'd think Walmart would be concerned about the amount of times I'd visited this week.
I'm disgusted with myself right now.
Yet here I was again, and I was being stalked.
I don't think I've ever had a zebra.
All those items aren't going to be good for my digestive system.
It's very good right now, but you know what?
I took my first bite of this cheesecake. Dude,
I could say that today is over, but unfortunately it is not.
Can't believe I made it through almost 5 days of this.
that will be me tomorrow morning. I genuinely could not believe that I'd made it to this meal, but the end of the day was finally in sight. Besides, what harm could yet another food item that scratches the roof of my mouth do? Yeah, it turns out the bacon on this pizza was a little too crispy. At this point, I wasn't sure if my mouth would ever fully recover from this challenge.
The bacon is crunchy.
And stomach over here.
That tastes so good.
I would eat a whole plate of those. I would eat a whole fucking plate of those. I've never had that. I don't know what this is. They put something else inside of it, but that's fucking delicious, bro.
What?
No.
Hey, we still gotta try these tacos, dude.
Get. Why?
We all gotta try tacos.
This is bullshit. What did you order?
What do you mean, what did I order?
What did you order?
What is that? What is that? What is that? Okay, hold on.
What did you order?
There was a plate with a beautiful cup that had avocado, limes, and all this shit, and there was a bunch of shrimp butterflied around the...
I already started looking at flights. Thought we might spend 2 weeks touring Germany and France, visit some castles, see some art museums. Very romantic and educational. Marina nodded, though the idea of spending 2 weeks in close quarters with Marshall felt suffocating after 8 months of freedom with Preston. That sounds lovely. Dad, Nate interjected. Can we visit those places you showed me in your photo albums? From when you were in the army? Of course, son. I'd love to show you where your old man learned to be a soldier. Marshall smiled at his son with genuine warmth, then turned back to Marina. It'll be just like old times, the three of us exploring the world together. Marina felt increasingly trapped by the conversation. Every reference to future plans together felt like chains being wrapped around her, finding her to a life she'd already decided to leave. Speaking of old times, Marshall continued, I ran into Jim Morrison downtown today. You remember? Marina nodded, though she had no memory of anyone named Jim Morrison. Said he'd heard through the grapevine that someone was asking questions about my military service. Background checks, reference calls, that sort of thing. Marshall's tone remained conversational, but his eyes never left Marina's face. Any idea why someone might be investigating me? No, Marina said quickly, though her heart rate spiked. Why would anyone investigate you? That's what I wondered. Jim thought it might be related to a potential government contract. You know how thorough their security clearances can be. But it got me thinking about other possibilities. Marshall paused to take a sip of wine, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Like what? Marina asked, despite herself. Well, divorce attorneys sometimes hire private investigators to dig up information on spouses, especially when there might be custody issues or significant assets at stake. Marshall's voice remained perfectly calm. Of course, that would only happen if someone was planning to file for divorce without telling their partner. Marina's blood turned to ice. The conversation had shifted from family vacation plans to divorce attorneys with a subtlety that left her reeling. Did Marshall know about her consultation with the Portland lawyer? Was he testing her, or was this genuine coincidence? That seems paranoid. She managed trying to keep her voice steady. Maybe, but 12 years in special forces taught me to pay attention to patterns. Like how you've been working late every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 4 months, or how your mileage doesn't match your claim destinations, or how your phone shows text messages to numbers you've never mentioned. The casual revelation that Marshall had been monitoring her activities hit Marina like a physical blow. Her husband, quiet, steady, trusting Marshall, had been conducting surveillance on her for months. Marshall, I'm not accusing you of anything, he said gently, reaching across the table to pat her hand. I'm just explaining why someone might hire investigators to look into my background. People planning major life changes often want to know exactly what they're up against. Nate looked between his parents with growing confusion, sensing undercurrents he couldn't understand. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, son, Marshall said, his voice warm and reassuring. Your mother and I were just discussing some complicated adult topics. Nothing for you to worry about, but Marina could see the lie in Marshall's eyes. Everything was not fine. Her husband knew about her affair, knew about her plans, and was conducting some kind of psychological chess game she didn't understand. I should call work, Marina said, standing abruptly. Make sure the Morrison presentation is ready for tomorrow. Of course, don't let me keep you from your important work. Marshall's smile was perfectly pleasant, and absolutely terrifying. Marina retreated to her home office, her hands shaking as she tried to process what had just happened. Marshall knew he'd known for who knew how long, and instead of confronting her directly, he'd been watching, waiting, planning. She called Preston's personal line, but it went straight to voicemail. His office line rang busy. Even his text messages weren't going through. For the first time since their affair began, Marina felt completely isolated from the man she planned to build a new life with. Preston had warned her that something was wrong, but she dismissed his paranoia as professional stress. Now she understood that Preston's fears were entirely justified. Marina returned to the dining room to find Marshall helping Nate with his evening medications. The picture of a devoted father caring for his injured son. Everything okay at work? Marshall asked without looking up. Fine. Just some last-minute details. Good. Preston Quinn seems like a demanding boss. I imagine he expects a lot from his employees. The casual mention of Preston's name made Marina's stomach drop. Marshall knew he knew everything. He's thorough, Marina said carefully. I'm sure he is. Successful people usually are. Marshall finished organizing Nate's pills and turned to face his wife. Sometimes thorough people make the mistake of thinking they're smarter than everyone else, that they can manipulate situations without consequences. What do you mean? Marshall's smile was colder than she'd ever seen it. Just a general observation about human nature. People who think they're playing chess sometimes discover they're actually playing against a grandmaster. The threat was clear despite being wrapped in pleasant conversation. Marshall wasn't just aware of her betrayal. He was several moves ahead of whatever game she impressed and thought they were playing. I'm tired, Marina said, desperately needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of falsity. Of course, it's been a long day for everyone. Marshall stood and began clearing the dinner dishes. Sweet dreams, honey. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. As Marina lay in bed that night, listening to Marshall's steady breathing beside her, she understood that her carefully planned escape to Portland had become. She was trapped in her own home, cut off from Preston, and married to a man who'd spent 12 years learning how to dismantle enemies who thought they were smarter than him. In Tomorrow, Marina Ashley was going to learn exactly what it costs to betray someone who'd never forgotten how to wage war. Chapter 9. Debts collected in full. The final act began at 7:03 a.m. when Preston Quinn arrived at Pinnacle Communications to find 2 FBI agents waiting in the lobby with his supervisor, Director of Human Resources, Sandra Chun, and the company's legal counsel. Mr. Quinn said Agent Rebecca Torres, we need to speak with you about some serious allegations regarding corruption and interstate wire fraud. Preston's legs nearly gave out. I don't understand. Yesterday evening, we received a comprehensive dossier documenting your systematic theft of proprietary client information, your manipulation of company financial systems, and your coordination with outside parties to sell confidential advertising strategies to competing firms. The accusations were completely fabricated, but the evidence looked devastatingly real. Bank records showing payments from competitor agencies, email correspondence, outlining information exchanges, even audio recordings of conversations that had been expertly edited to sound incriminating. This is impossible, Preston stammered. I've never... Mr. Quinn interrupted his supervisor. We're terminating your employment immediately. Security will escort you from the building while the FBI completes their investigation. Marina Ashley watched from her office window as Preston was led out of the building in handcuffs. His reputation destroyed, his career finished, his future in ruins. The man who promised her sophistication and passion was now facing federal charges for crimes he'd never committed, but couldn't prove he hadn't done. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marshall, "Come home. Now, we need to talk." Marina drove through the city in a daze, understanding that Preston's arrest was just the opening move in whatever Marshall had planned. By the time she reached their suburban home, she'd accepted that her husband had orchestrated the complete destruction of the man who'd broken their son's jaw. Marshall was waiting in the living room, no longer bothering to maintain the pretense of the loving husband. Brett Wise sat beside him, surrounded by surveillance equipment, legal documents, and photographs that chronicled 8 months of betrayal in excruciating detail. "Sit down, Marina," Marshall said quietly. She remained standing, clinging to whatever dignity she had left. "I suppose you know everything. I know that you've been having an affair with Preston Quinn for 8 months. I know you've stolen $47,000 from our joint accounts to fund your relationship. I know you consulted a divorce attorney in Portland about minimizing my parental rights and maximizing your asset recovery." Marshall's voice remained perfectly calm as he outlined the scope of her betrayal, each revelation hitting like a physical blow. "I know that Preston Quinn violently assaulted our 16-year-old son to cover up your affair. I know you stood there and watched it, and I know you were planning to take Nate away from me and disappear to the other side of the country with a man who specializes in manipulating and abandoning women." Marshall, I can explain. No explanation necessary. Marshall stood, his gray eyes reflecting the kind of cold determination Marina had never seen before. "You made your choices. You chose betrayal over loyalty. You chose a stranger over your family. You chose your own desires over your son's welfare. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." Brett Wise spoke for the first time. His boyish features hardened with disgust. "We have recordings of you prioritizing your relationship with Preston over Nate's recovery. We have documentation of you stealing money from your family to pay for romantic getaways. We have evidence of you planning to take a 16-year-old boy away from his father, to live with a man who'd already shown he was willing to violence hurt children." Marina felt the walls closing in around her. "What do you want?" "What I want," Marshall said, "is for you to understand that actions have consequences, that betraying someone's trust carries a price, and that some debts must be paid in full." He handed her a manila folder divorce papers filed this morning. "You'll find the terms very straightforward." Marina opened the folder with trembling hands, scanning the legal documents that would dissolve 15 years of marriage. The settlement was devastating, but legal. Marshall would retain the house, primary custody of Nate, and most of their joint assets. Marina would receive enough money to start over, but nowhere near enough to maintain her current lifestyle. "You can't do this," she whispered. "It's already done. The court has reviewed evidence of your adultery, your financial impropriety, and your plan to relocate our son without proper legal procedures. They've ruled in my favor on all major points. I'll fight this. I'll hire the best lawyer." "With what money?" Brett asked coldly. "Your funds. Your employment at Pinnacle Communications has been terminated due to your association with Preston Quinn's criminal activities. And every reputable divorce attorney in the state has already been retained by Marshall's legal team, creating conflicts of interest that prevent them from representing you." Marina stared at the two men who'd systematically destroyed her life in less than 24 hours. "You planned all of this." "We responded to your choices," Marshall corrected. "You chose to betray your family. We simply ensured the consequences matched the scope of your betrayal." "What about Nate?" "He's my son too. Nate will decide for himself whether he wants a relationship with the mother who watched a stranger break his jaw and said nothing." Marshall's voice carried no emotion whatsoever. "But he'll make that decision from the safety of his father's house, with people who actually put his welfare ahead of their own desires." Marina felt the last of her fight drain away. Preston was facing federal charges that would destroy his life, even if he was eventually acquitted. Her career was finished, her reputation ruined, her finances depleted. She had no allies, no resources, and no reasonable hope of changing the outcome Marshall had crafted. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "I suspected for months. I knew for certain the day Preston put his hands on my son." Marshall's gray eyes never wavered. "That's when this stopped being about a failing marriage, and started being about protecting my family from people who'd proven they were willing to hurt children. I never wanted Nate to get hurt. But you didn't protect him when he did get hurt. You stood there and watched, more concerned about covering up your affair than defending your son. That's when you stopped being Nate's mother and became just another threat to his welfare. The finality in Marshall's voice made clear that no amount of pleading or explanation would change his mind. He made his decision based on her actions, not her words. You have 72 hours to pack your personal belongings and vacate this house, Marshall continued. Brett will supervise to ensure nothing inappropriate is removed. After that, all communication between us will go through attorneys. Marshall, please. Mrs. Ashley, Marshall's voice turned formal, indicating that the conversation was over. You chose to betray the trust of a man who'd spent 12 years learning how to destroy enemies more dangerous than you could imagine. You chose to threaten the welfare of his only child. And you chose to align yourself with a man who thought he could intimidate a 16-year-old boy without consequences. Marshall stood, towering over his soon-to-be ex-wife, with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Those choices have been very expensive for you. They've cost you your marriage, your family, your career, and your future. Preston Quinn's choices have cost him even more: his freedom, his reputation, and his understanding of what happens when cowards pick fights with people who actually know how to fight back. You've destroyed both our lives. No, Marshall said quietly. You destroyed your own lives the moment you decided that betraying my trust and hurting my son were acceptable prices to pay for your happiness. I simply ensured that the bill came due in full. Marina Ashley walked out of her home for the last time 3 days later, carrying 2 suitcases and enough money to start over somewhere far away. Preston Quinn was facing federal charges that would likely result in years in prison. His sophisticated lifestyle revealed as a house of cards built on other people's money and trust. Nate Ashley recovered from his broken jaw and decided he wanted no contact with the mother who'd chosen her lover over her son's safety. He focused on his studies, his basketball, and rebuilding his relationship with a father who'd proven that family loyalty was worth fighting for. And Marshall Ashley returned to his security consulting business. His reputation for getting results now announced to a family. I nodded, knowing that if you were a manager in my bank region, I too would be looking for someone with a bit more experience managing a branch before considering them for a corporate role. So tell me, how did the two of you meet? Amber asked, her eyes darting between Catalina and me. We looked at each other, silently questioning who would tell the story. I thought Catalina telling it would be a bit funnier than if I did. Well, we have to go back to when your father first arrived here. At the time, I was engaged to someone else, but he wasn't faithful, Catalina said, noting David's nod of understanding. Her hand never left my father. Yet I always saw your father walking around with this face that sort of looked like someone shoved a pine cone up his keister, Catalina said, eliciting a giggle from Amber and a light chuckle from David. I mean, he is a handsome man, but I was engaged, and I don't stray, she continued, noting how Amber dropped her head at that. Anyway, as time went on, that face never left him for the 2 years he was here. So when I walked into his office that day, I had been single for a few months. I told your father to pull whatever was in his bum out of it.
Any other
The man
dishes?
could laugh. She teased me, which I deserved. I was in a hole during those years. Then we built a friendship. I knew he wanted more, but he was patient with me. After 3 months, we had our first date, and it went from there. I never looked back, Catalina said with love-filled eyes that she looked at me. So, I thought if you two aren't too tired, we'd explore the city for the day, get you used to the lay of the land, and then come back. And I'll cook us a nice big dinner, Catalina said, her eagerness to make them feel welcome evident. Oh, you've never been to the beach? I said, noticing how my daughter's eyes widened. Seeing how we have this week off, how about we head down to Roberto's place if he'll let us use it for a few days? I suggested, looking over at my wife, knowing the place was large enough for all of us. You sure, honey? They're here, and it's easier to go to the beach here than it is in Kansas City, I stated factually. You know, I'm fine with it. I know that Landra will be ecstatic to go, but you'll have to talk to Roberto, Catalina said, looking at me. I know, I nodded, seeing how it was my idea. Roberto was the type of man who respected you more if the one who thought of the idea was the one to ask. That's what I picked up from him over the years of knowing him. I'll go make the call, I said, rising from my seat. The sounds of the city below has faded to nothing as I slid the glass door closed. You enjoying your show, Munchkin? Oh, Landra hummed, her attention squarely on the TV, as it always was on a Saturday morning. Walking out of Catalina's in my bedroom with my phone after it had charged, my thumb scrolled up the screen as the names of people I had met and grown close to since moving to Charlotte passed. As I neared Roberto's contact info, I said, Buenos dias, as Roberto's thick, accented voice came over the line.
No scene. No scene.
Good morning, Roberto, I greeted. He didn't mind if I spoke English instead of Spanish since he knew I could do both. I was wondering if you could do me a favor. Oh, the left corner of his lip lifted when he switched to English. All of Catalina's family could speak English. They only pretended they didn't when someone was making a fool of themselves in front of them. I had seen it a few times when some passing salesman tried to pawn off his wares while not outright insulting their intelligence, but you knew what the man was doing. It was always hilarious when the ladies joined in, and then the teenagers would join in too, watching as the person scurried back to their car. Yeah, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind if Catalina and I used your place at Canadian Hole, I said, seeing my daughter instantly whip around in her seat, knowing what that meant. I couldn't hide the glee on her face when I said that. Of course you can, amigo. What's the special occasion? He had a reason to ask, given we normally went to the mountains for vacations. Much cheaper on the wallet and fewer people around. We usually only went to the beach when the whole family went to Canadian Hole. My eldest daughter flew in with her fiancé, and she's never seen the ocean, I said truthfully. The whole family knew about how we were estranged, but understood why I walked out like I did. I see, I answered when Roberto asked if I was bringing them over next weekend. I heard my sister-in-law's voice in the background, asking what had him so excited. When I heard her excited voice, I knew that once he told her, the whole family would know in less than 10 minutes. Do you want me to bring the keys over? Nah, we'll pick them up when we show them around the city, say around 1, I replied, still ignoring my daughter's antics on the couch as she bounced on it. Zero has a game today, but I'll leave them. I nodded as he told me about the secret hiding spot where he usually kept a spare house key. You tell Zero I'll be rooting for him. I expect 5 home runs. I heard my brother-in-law chuckle over the line. I knew Zero could go pro. He was just that good, and I wished him all the luck in the world. I will. I hope she enjoys the beach, as do I said before ending the call. Poppy, are we going to the beach? Alondra asked with bated breath. We are, I said, pocketing my phone and smiling at my daughter's antics as she bounced underneath. I was thinking we could go on Monday and enjoy the beach until Thursday. Is that okay with you, Princess? I couldn't keep the smile from touching my lips at Alandra's enthusiastic nod. Now behave while you continue to enjoy the show, I said before stepping back out onto the balcony, feeling Catalina's hand on my back as I sank back into my seat. Hours later, we were cruising through the streets of Charlotte. Alandra sat between David and Amber in the back seat, pointing out places she loved, such as the Discovery Place. It was a little expensive, but worth it, a very informative place, especially for a 4-year-old's mind. When lunch rolled around, we stopped at a popular downtown sit-down restaurant. I watched as my 2 daughters chatted away, and I noted how my wife had a happy, content look on her face as she watched her children from across the table. David and I had a pleasant conversation about his 401k. While I wasn't a stock trader, I didn't know my way around them, so I gave him some tips about where I put money in my own 401k. I noticed how he was listening intently to every word, which told me he was planning ahead. I hoped the 2 of them wouldn't end up like the witch, and I did. I have to admit, David was a pleasant man. Just don't tell him I said that. I do have to keep up my father-in-law vibe, yet I was happy that Amber found herself a man who appeared to be genuinely good. After lunch, we headed over to Roberto's place. I could see David's and Amber's confused looks when we pulled up to their house in Dorita. I told them to wait in the car before quickly hopping out and heading toward the spot Roberto had mentioned, where he would leave the house keys for his place in Canadian Hall. It didn't take me long to find them. The keys jingled in my hand, and a warmth spread through my heart when I read Roberto's and Catalina's sister's note. They had written in English because I could speak Spanish but not read it. I was very touched by their words. Ever since I started dating Catalina, her sister had sized me up and told me not to hurt her sister, or I'd have to deal with her and Roberto. However, over the months of our whirlwind romance, I grew on her and my brother-in-law. They were the first ones to help out when Catalina got overwhelmed with caring for Alandra when she was first born. Not that I blame Catalina. Having your first child is nerve-wracking. I know Catalina went to bed every so often with worry in her mind about whether she would be a good mother, and so on. So, I called in the troops and took my wife out on those days to show her that she was indeed a very good mother. As night descended on Charlotte, my little family gathered in the living room to spend time together watching a movie. It doesn't really matter what you do as long as you do it together. It was already bedtime when I noticed Amber and David nodding off. I couldn't blame them. They had been up since the wee hours of the morning to catch their flight. Catalina gave me a look that I interpreted as go to your dad thing. I couldn't deny I was watching that bomb of hers as she carried Amber to her room. Amber, I whispered, lightly shaking her arm. My mind flashed back to when she was just a little girl, and would mutter in that sleepy tone of hers. "Let's get you to bed," I said, seeing her eyes peering at me through the slits of her lids. "Sorry," she said. I waved David off when he roused in his seat. "It happens, don't worry about it," I said lightly. The moment Amber got to her feet, her arms slid around me. "I've missed this for 7 years," Amber whispered into my chest. "Good night, Dad," she said before placing a kiss on my left cheek and slipping her arm around David's waist. I was lying in bed waiting for Catalina to come sauntering in, which she did after 15 minutes. This was quick for Alandra. It told me she was worn out. I felt myself hardening when I saw that sultry smile on my wife's lips as she walked along the bedside towards our bathroom. Her eyes noted the movement of the sheets, which only intensified that sultry smile of hers. How that soft body of hers felt so divine beside mine. Once she had slid beneath the sheets, I bit my lip. My Amori shouldn't be going to bed with a heart on. "Catalina," I said in a sinful tone, "we had sex and I slept like a baby afterward, wouldn't you?" Yet, all too soon, 5 a.m. came around and our alarm went off, which meant I had to get a land drive so we could be on the road for the 3-hour drive to Asheville. Catalina was